Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the second episode of the Kaiju season that we're doing. I am Steve, your host, the host with the most, and I'm joined by my co-host. He's got atomic breath for days. It's Daniel.
Thank you, Steven. And I am, of course, joined by my co-host, Steven. He, too, comes in 4 eras.
What?
The Godzilla eras! Come on!
Oh, okay. Allegedly.
Allegedly. 4 flavors of crisp.
Yum, yum.
Yum.
So we're doing a Kaiju season, Daniel.
Yes.
What this means is that we're going to do a series of movies, a string of movies, if you will. Check out the Facebook page for a posting on the full list that we're going to do. But basically, we're doing movies that involve a giant monster attacking a city or a surrounding, and the people who are trying to stop him. We thought, well, we should start with the OG. I had a look at the 1954 movie, and I decided I can't watch this. Well, it's very hard to see. I can't see half of it.
Well, we kind of started with Godzilla versus Kong.
Right.
So we thought we're going to do a Godzilla movie and a King Kong movie, but we're not going to do the originals.
Because they're a bit, I don't know. There's not that much to talk about them. They've been talked to death. They're instant classics. Yeah. You know, if you want to check them out. Specifically by the Criterions, because they have a lot of information about them.
Right.
On them, and a lot of interviews with the creators and that kind of stuff. The interviews are a lot more interesting than the movies, to be perfectly honest. But we're not doing the originals. We're doing the 1984 remake / reboot / sequel to the original, which is the Return of Godzilla.
Yes.
Directed by, god damn it, IMDb, you fuckers.
By Koji Hashimoto, written by Shuichi Nakahara, with special effects by Teruyoshi Nakano, and cinematography by Katsumi Hara.
Thank you, Daniel.
To the rescue.
So, to sort of give people a bit of background to this ordeal, obviously Godzilla, a huge success for the studio that made it, Toho. And, it followed an American release of the original Godzilla movie called Godzilla King of Monsters, with some very, very dated and horrible inserting of white man point of view in them.
It was more like a re-edit.
Yeah, it was a re-edit, but it's horrible. Don't watch it. Watch the original.
Yeah, don't watch it.
It included some pretty groundbreaking use of matte paintings and rear screen projection and
suitmation.
Mixing of miniature work and sets and like you said, people in suits. And it became a huge franchise for Toho and sort of Japanese cinema in general. And the original had a bunch of sequels to it.
Yes.
And then at some point, they basically made so many of them that they, either fans at some point and then Toho themselves, sort of started segmenting them into eras.
Well, kind of. Because, so the first era of Godzilla is known as the Showa Era, which was from the original up until, I think, 1964-ish. 1960s, at least. And that sort of ended with Godzilla dying, quote unquote, but also because he was no longer successful in Japan. His last film was actually kind of a box office bomb, which led to a lot of attempts by Toho to reboot Godzilla, leading ultimately to this movie, 1975 was the last of the Showa Era, sorry. So yeah, he was gone for like 9 years, leading to this movie, which is the beginning of what is known as the Heisei Era, which is the second era of Godzilla.
Right. So in total, we have the Showa Era from 1954 to 1975. Then we have the Heisei Era from 1984, starting with this movie we're talking about today, until 1995. And then we had the Millennium Era, which lasted from 1999 to 2004, ending with Final Wars. And now we have something called the Reiwa Era, which includes the 2016 Shin Godzilla and the American sort of not remakes, but the American versions from 2014 and onwards.
Yeah.
With Godzilla King of Monsters, and I guess to an extent Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
We wanted to pick one, and I kind of landed on Return of Godzilla because as I was reading some of the plot synopsis of some of the movies from the different eras, I was like, this is some bullshit. But I like the idea of returning to form, like a return to form of the original Godzilla, because a lot of them, it's kind of like Godzilla as a franchise is similar to James Bond in the sense that a lot of them are very, very goofy.
Right.
And also, he's a horrible monster.
I mean, yeah, you're kind of right.
Right, but a lot of them are very goofy in both franchises, and then you sort of have these interspersed bursts where it's like, okay, we need to return to form, we need to bring it back to the basics, yeah, that kind of thing. Even though the original James Bond was never really that serious, but anyway, so I like the idea of stripped down. He's not a good guy. He's a force of basically destruction. He's like a mindless animal pretty much. He doesn't show emotions. He doesn't care about human beings. He's not friends with them. He doesn't have a baby sidekick.
Yeah, that was kind of what happened at the end of the Showa Era. Is he was friend of the children.
The other thing with Return of Godzilla is that in the canon of the series, it's supposed to be a sequel to the original.
Yeah.
The first one. It
basically negates all of the other movies up until that point, except the first one. It's a very Hollywood approach.
Yeah, but I think it's a good idea. I think.
Yeah.
Because it sort of drives home the point is that no, we're serious about this. We're all the jokey stuff didn't happen because you can't make a serious movies when you have 10, 15 years of silliness behind you, and all of a sudden you're serious. You need to eliminate all that canon and kind of start from the point where last time it was serious.
Yeah, but I do find it kind of interesting that this movie decided to include the original, kind of despite itself. We'll get to that when we get to the plot.
Yeah.
Whereas a movie like Shin Godzilla decided to just go which this is actually kind of similar to in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. It is very similar.
Decided to just go full on reboot.
Yeah, but I can see why they did it because keep in mind this was 1984, so a lot of people who would have seen the original in the 50s were still around kicking.
Yeah.
When this came out, so they would have identified that connection to the original. Oh yeah, this is the same as that one from the 50s. Because I saw that back then. In the 80s, this would have came out when a lot of people who were alive during the Hiroshima bombings would have still been alive.
Yeah.
Well, not those who were. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the people who were alive during the
Japan.
Time.
Yeah. And obviously Godzilla has a lot of connection with that. And actually, I want to bring some of this up because there's not a lot of special features that I could find regarding the specific movie, Return of Godzilla. But I did rewatch some of the special features on the Criterion for the original Godzilla. Because I wanted to see because that's the one where they conceived the creature, right? So I wanted to see some of the philosophy behind the creation of it.
Right.
One of the interesting points that I thought was brought up by the person who created the original music for the original Godzilla, Akira Ifukube, who, by the way, has an hour-long interview. It's very interesting.
Nice.
He read the script when he was offered the movie to score, and he interpreted it as a weapon, Godzilla being a weapon in itself, that not even technology can defeat him. Not even technology that defeated Japan, aka the nuclear bombs, not even that can defeat Godzilla. So a force of nature that is outside of the spectrum of technology to contain. Which I thought was an interesting way to look at it, because usually people just kind of frame it as a metaphor for anti-nuclear war,
including
but
this movie.
well, yeah, in some ways, yeah. But I thought it was an interesting point of view. Daniel, first of all, I know you've seen some other Godzilla movies before. Have you ever seen this one before?
No, actually, a lot of my Godzilla viewing has been Showa Era because it's the dumb era, kind of.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't actually think I may have watched one of the later Heisei Era ones, the one with I can't remember what it's called, but it's the one with King Ghidorah in it.
Okay.
I think I've seen that one, and then it's mostly just like clips of the others, and I haven't watched much of Millennium outside of the American one. Fun fact about the American production in regards to this movie, there was actually supposed to be an American Godzilla movie around the time of this movie's release.
Yeah, Godzilla 3D.
Godzilla 3D,
Yeah.
which was gonna be stop motion animated Godzilla, and it was gonna be this huge production. And Toho was like, "Yeah, we can't really seem to get it off the ground, so why not?" Which led to a giant fan petition being like, "No, America can't be the first one to bring Godzilla back. We need to do our own." So they made this movie kind of in response, but then the American movie never got made.
All right. So what the hell is happening in this movie?
This movie is 80s as hell. It takes place in the 80s. It is very similar to the original in a lot of ways, in that it starts with a boat being destroyed.
Yeah.
Well,
it has a cold open, so to speak.
Yeah, we follow a small ship that gets attacked, quote unquote, by Godzilla, and then the mystery starts of what the hell did this?
Right. So, the boat gets attacked. Now, what I noticed, and I noticed this only because I watched a special little documentary that's on the Criterion for the original, is that besides the Hiroshima bombings, another aspect that inspired the creation of Godzilla was the nuclear incident that happened in the Atoll Islands, the Bikini.
Yeah.
The Bikini Islands.
The Pacific nuclear tests.
Yes. And the irradiated crew of a sailboat called the Lucky Dragon Number 5. That was the name of the boat. And the boat that got irradiated, and of course everybody on that boat died of radiation poisoning. And of course that sort of sparked a lot of outrage by the Japanese people because their people just got radiated a third time by the U.S. government, and sort of increased the awareness of specifically nuclear fallout, which until that incident was not really a thing. Basically, the design of the Lucky Number 5, the Lucky Dragon boat, which is available in an exposition in Japan, the design of that boat is the same-ish design as the boat we see in this movie in the cold open.
And it's also it's called the
Yamada Maru Number 5.
Yeah.
So, which I thought was a very interesting. I don't think I would have gotten any of that if I didn't watch the documentary. So, I thought that was an interesting choice to put it like that, in the movie. Basically, draw a direct correlation.
Yeah.
Right. So we get the cold open. It's cool, and then we get it cuts from the cold open to the credits with the musical sting, right?
The opening song.
And then it cuts to the main character Goro, who's a journalist on a boat, and in the background it's like infomercial music.
Yes, I love this.
It's like a song that I guess was produced for the movie, and it's like this Japanese
like 80s pop, like city pop.
Yeah, but the instrumental sounds like an infomercial.
Yeah.
Like it feels like the main character is gonna turn his face to the camera and start selling you laxatives or something.
It was kind of funny watching this because I'm of course a little bit more familiar with the jokier side of Godzilla, and I had gotten the idea that this was going to be serious, but then it starts with this and I'm like, wait, maybe it isn't.
This journalist comes across the boat and he explores it, and of course most of the crew are dead.
Right.
And he encounters what I wrote down was the skeleton from Psycho.
Yes, I was also very much like, oh, Mother is here.
Norman. And one of the crew is still alive. He's tucked away in a closet in the ship. and he gets attacked by what looks like a giant shrimp.
It's a tick.
In the movie, it's referred to as a sea louse, at least in the subtitles.
Right, a louse. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really big. It looks like something out of a Cronenberg movie.
Yeah. On a fishing line.
Or out of a Fallout video game.
Yeah, actually, it does look like a little.
Some of the miniature, it's not a miniature. Some of the puppet work with it looks kind of strange, especially when he flings at the camera.
It looks like it's on a fishing line, which is kind of funny. But the model itself is really good.
No, the model, it has that 80s, like I said, Cronenberg sort of.
It kind of reminds me. This is not 80s, but in Pacific Rim,
right?
They also have the idea of basically kaiju ticks, like bugs that crawl around on kaijus, and because they drink kaiju blood, they get big. That's at least the explanation in this movie for why this thing is so huge. And it's this like little creature, and it kind of reminds me of that. Could be it's a reference to it. It reminds me of a slug, like a cockroach slug kind of thing.
It was interesting. That that's sort of the first monster attack that we see in this, and it's from a giant tick.
Yeah.
I thought, even though the wire work, like you said, is very cheesy, I thought it was fine for what it was.
Yeah, like totally works. And I would actually say up until that point, there's a really good dose of atmosphere. Like they're pretty good at getting the idea that this is an abandoned ship and it's gonna be a little bit spooky.
Woo!
Has a really interesting color palette. There's a lot of like pinks and purples.
Well, like you said, it's 80s as fuck, right?
It is 80s as fuck.
Everybody's house was just full of squares.
They're smoking pipes.
Pipes. All the walls are just white, and everybody has a CRT monitor.
I kind of love the aesthetic of this movie.
It looks pretty great, and so he finds the last survivor of the ship. Retroactively, we get explained that everybody else was sucked dry by the louses, which is a very disgusting thing to think about.
Yeah.
But the last survivor is a man by the name of Hiroshi Okumura, who played by Shin Takuma, who is basically brought to a secret facility and kept away from the public. And that's where we learned, because then the government comes in and interrogates him, and they show him stills from the original movie, the 1950s movie. And that's when we learned that, this is in the same universe. And then the idea, I guess, behind it is that the Japanese government, kept the existence of Godzilla a secret.
Yeah, question mark.
From the world. But then I'm not so sure about that, because later on, the reporter who found the last survivor is talking to his news editor, and he's like, I think it was Godzilla. And then the news editor was like, oh, yeah, it might be Godzilla. So he's aware that Godzilla existed. Right. So I'm like, do some people know that Godzilla existed and other people don't? Is he like a myth? Is it like 9/11 was an inside job type thing?
Yeah, and it kind of becomes a question later, because why did Goro not think about Godzilla to begin with when he saw that giant tick?
Right.
And this also comes in with like how many people actually know, because we meet characters later whose parents died to Godzilla, apparently. Yeah. But then when the Americans and the Soviet get involved, they're like, "No, we don't know what this thing is." Who?
We only heard of King Kong.
You got him?
You got King Kong over there? Yeah, so it's a very bizarre sort of reality leap where, okay, the first movie did happen in the canon of this universe, but the government kept it hush-hush, so only certain people know about it. I guess people who are in the know are like conspiracy theorists. And to sort of supplant that idea, they established that Godzilla is immortal.
Yeah.
So he's forever young. So, okay. The reporter wants to dig up, I guess, more information about Godzilla. because the government is keeping all of this hush hush, and they kept the Hiroshi, the survivor, hidden away in like a military hospital or something, I guess. So he's away from the public. You can't access him. And he goes to visit a scientist who specializes in studying Godzilla, even though nobody knows he exists.
Yeah.
So Professor Makoto, who coincidentally, his assistant Naoko is the sister of the survivor of the ship Hiroshi.
Yep.
I'm like, a small world.
Yeah, very small world.
To the point
But
where I
ZILLA.
was confused whether Goro visited the scientist to meet with Naoko, or was that just happened by happenstance to take place.
That was also kind of when she revealed it. I was like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, because he pulls up because he got a picture with the survivor and Naoko, and they're like brother and sister, and he gives it to the scientist. And then the scientist is like, yeah, it's her. And he's like, okay.
The easiest investigation ever.
I am a genius. But anyway, we move on to more shenanigans where it's very interesting because then other foreign powers get involved, where we see a Russian submarine.
Soviet submarine.
My apologies. A Soviet submarine. And they're minding their own business, being Soviet, and they get attacked by what they 100% think is an American submarine of the LA class, whatever the fuck that means.
But yeah, and they get attacked, and it's Godzilla basically.
Yeah,
and it's destroyed.
And the general of the submarine, played by Will Ferrell as Ron Burgundy. Just looks like Ron Burgundy, and
it's an amazing mustache.
Yeah, and I like that within seconds of them intercepting. Oh, there's another thing. We don't know what it is. It might be an American submarine. Within seconds, the Russian commander's like, I am open to the idea of nuclear war. Within seconds.
That'll be a theme.
It's like, what? There's a bug on the submarine. Nuclear war.
But yeah, this calls for a diplomatic crisis, and the Americans and the Soviets meet in Japan because Japan has to reveal that no, in fact, it's Godzilla. And they have the best meeting I've ever seen in a movie.
They have like a UN style meeting, with the Russians and the Americans.
In like both a very big conference room and a very tiny conference room. I don't know, it was adorable.
It was shot tightly, but then you have some wide shots. It looked quaint for for an international crisis conference room.
And you have an American like diplomat and a Soviet diplomat that both look like they were pulled off the street and put in a suit.
They look like they're from a Tim and Eric sketch.
Yes, actually a little bit. The Soviet guy more so. The Soviet guy is almost like Rasputin level.
There's multiple meetings like this in the movie. I think the American, I don't know, diplomat, ambassador, whatever the fuck he is.
Whatever.
The guy who talks for the Americans. He has the best line in the whole movie. The Prime Minister of Japan, he reveals the existence of Godzilla. And both the USSR and the Americans are like, we gotta nuke him.
Yeah.
You just gotta nuke him. What are you gonna do?
Can't do this without nuclear
What are you
weapons.
gonna do? You gotta, when you have something like that, you gotta drop some nukes. That's what That's what it is. And the American, ambassador is pushing hard for this, and the Prime Minister of Japan is like, we need caution. We need, this will kill thousands of people, all of them Japanese, right? Because Godzilla's in proximity of Japan, right? And the American ambassador has the line, this is no time to be discussing principles. It ain't no time to be discussing principles. Goddamn, gotta drop some nukes on the motherfucker.
Which, this movie is kind of adorably hilarious in a way, because, the first Godzilla movie is very much a response to the nuclear bombs dropped on Japan during World War II and a lot of other stuff. But this movie is taking that and sort of spinning it into like a Cold War era thing. but it's doing it in such an adorable way that it's like, oh my god, this is
Yeah, and
this
I
is
think
cute.
that from a principled point of view, I think Japan is correct. Like, which
Yeah,
is that a lot of countries were caught in the quote unquote fallout and sometimes literal fallout
yeah,
of the Cold War between the US and the USSR, where both of them were trying
yeah.
to outdick each other.
And Japan especially giving its position,
Yeah.
in
And
between the two countries.
yeah, other smaller country had to suffer because both of these superpowers disregarded other countries
Right.
which were involved. And we get to have a look see at the USSR's and US's space weapons, so they can launch
Yes.
nukes from space.
The US giant massive Akira
Yeah,
reference
Akira.
almost.
Yeah, but it's before Akira, isn't it? Because this is in '84 and Akira was in '88, I think.
Yeah, I actually think it was, but it looks very much like the Soul space laser from Akira.
Yeah, and wasn't there a reference to that also in like Invincible, which we just watched?
Yes.
But they both look like just pieces of artwork, like they don't
Yeah.
move at all or anything. And
Oh, there's a little shot when the two countries decide that there shouldn't be any nukes, but the Russians sneak in one through a ship,
right.
and that gets fired because Godzilla, and the Americans fire one to intercept, and that's when we see the Americans' space station.
It's just a satellite with some rockets attached to it, basically.
Yeah.
So the movie sort of has two parts. You have the development of the Godzilla thing, where Godzilla is slowly getting to Tokyo. He's slowly getting there, and then you have sort of this large subplot of the Japanese Prime Minister pleading with these superpowers to not nuke the fuck out of his country.
Right. Which, to be fair,
It's compelling. Like, from his point of view, he is both trying to appeal to like a common sense reason, like, look, this doesn't make sense, and also it might not hurt him. He's probably panicked out of his mind that they might nuke the fuck out of the country, So it's quite effective.
They also reveal Japan's secret weapon, which is the Super X,
Fucking
the armored
Super
flying
X.
force.
Can you not think of a better name?
No. Which I actually think was referenced in Godzilla vs. Kong. The pods they fly in to go to the Hollow Earth thing. I actually think was based on that, on the Flying Fortress.
Oh yeah, okay, I can see that. I noted down here because now as the movie progresses, we get to see Godzilla in all of his silly costumeness, and he's attacking like a nuclear facility. He's draining the uranium or the radiation, whatever, out of.
He's sticking his head and smelling the fumes of the cooling tower.
Sticking his head and into a silo, and,
Yeah.
and he gets distracted by cartoon birds.
Yeah. Yes. And I love the scientists trying to explain away why.
You see,
it's like, oh, they entered his magnetic field and he got confused.
Sure.
Kinda. Sure.
As we get to see some of the effects, the miniature work in the Godzilla attacks is pretty impressive at points.
Yeah.
I love some of the montages of the military getting ready, especially as he reaches Tokyo Bay. Liked specifically the Tokyo Bay fight with the military, where you get to see explosions off the suit, like it just bounces off the suit, the explosions.
Yeah.
It looked really cool. Some effects look a bit dodgy. In that fight, there's a random green screen of just a soldier on fire.
Yeah.
That looks like put in on top of everything. I was like, ah!
There's also one particular miniature set when he's further into the city, where he's like standing in a corner with like two giant buildings next to him.
The one that reflects his image.
Yeah, but he looks tiny because the buildings are, you don't really see the top of the buildings.
Right.
And Godzilla isn't really towering across Tokyo, so he just looks tiny.
You look like a tiny boy.
Also, Godzilla's face.
Yeah, man. His googly eyes.
He looks bug-eyed.
He looks. What's the opposite of cross-eyed?
Bug-eyed.
Oh, I guess you're right. Yeah.
He looks drunk.
Go drunk, Godzilla. You're home.
Like he looks fine when you see him from like the side.
Yeah.
But when you see him like close to the front, he looks drunk.
I did find
Which-
some behind the scenes work very briefly on YouTube.
Okay.
And they did put servo motors in the face for this one, so the eyes could move. The eyes and mouth could move.
Yeah, and you do see the face move, and it looks pretty good. Like
Yeah, but like you said, the eyes, and the problem is the material that they use for the eyes reflects like plastic.
Yeah.
So it looks exactly like plastic. Like when line is shined on it, it reflects exactly like a piece of like shiny plastic.
Yeah, not like an eye.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, this is plastic, obviously.
Also, the skin is a bit more too rubbery, and
It's okay. I mean, I told you behind the scenes. But I told you that I don't like the design of it in general, that it looks like a tumor or a turd.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think it has a charm to it.
I get that. It's just, it kind of clashes with the serious tone.
Yeah.
Because you said that a lot of the tone of this movie is similar to Shin Godzilla, and I agree. The difference is that the monster in that looked a lot more...
horrifying.
Yeah, horrifying. Whereas this is obviously just a guy in a suit, so like you said, there's scenes where he looks tiny.
Yeah.
So...
And you can see like, because the head is basically a helmet that the guy inside the suit wears. Kampachiro Satsuma, who plays Godzilla, his head wobbles.
Yep. Fun fact:
Which
Kampachiro Satsuma was not the person for which this suit was designed. Ooh. So the person who originally was the suit was designed for, either I think quit or something, and they brought in Kampachiro, and the problem is he's much shorter than that actor. He's still obviously a strong man because it's a very heavy suit.
Yeah.
But the problem is he had to lumber a lot more weight than the suit was designed for. Like the suit was designed for a much more taller man. So he had to carry a lot more weight, and he said it was the worst experience of his life, or it was like hell on earth to lumber this much weight on him.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of because through the Showa era it was kind of like one guy doing it.
Right.
And he also has stated after the fact that it was horrible.
Yeah, like in this suit he could only sweat through the fingertips. It sounds like hell.
Yeah.
So Godzilla's rampaging around through Tokyo, and then you have the side plot. Yeah, and you have the side plot of the reporter, the survivor of the ship, and the scientist and his sister, and they're trying to figure out a way to use radio waves to attract Godzilla away from Tokyo and into a volcano.
Yeah.
You know, when you say it like that, it sounds quite silly because it is.
Yeah.
So along the way, you get this sort of set piece where Godzilla attacks like a bullet train. You know, those classic Japan bullet trains. But by the way, you get a shot of earlier on, which I could have sworn looked like a shot from Evangelion. Obviously, it's not ripping off Evangelion because this is from the 80s. But it looks like the same shot where you get the train turning.
Oh, yeah. Now that you say it, yeah.
Yeah, it's in one of the montages that they have.
Right.
But anyway, we get this miniature train action sequence. And funnily enough, I don't know this for sure, but I know that there was a conceptual train sequence like this made for the original Godzilla, but they never shot it. There's artwork of it, so I'm thinking they just did it for this one as a sort of an homage to that.
So it's like Peter Jackson's King Kong and the Bug Pit.
Yes, but less gross.
Yeah, we'll get to that one.
Yeah. But what did you think of this train sequence? Because I think it's sort of it's kind of a standout moment, right? Like,
yeah, like I think it's one of the times where like the special effects really clicks.
Yeah,
you know, where the model work and the pyrotechnics and everything just clicks and looks really good.
It does look like a guy in a suit just picking up a toy train, though.
Yeah, but it looks good for what it's trying to be.
Yeah,
and again, this is a movie from the 80s.
Yeah,
so,
it's fine. But when he picks up the train and the people inside are like, oh, There's one guy, I swear to God, who looks exactly like Godzilla and laughs.
I didn't notice that guy.
I swear to God, I'm gonna put it in the clips. You're gonna see it. It's very strange. And speaking of people who have weird opinions about Godzilla destroying the city, we get like a bum character, I guess you could say, like a comic relief character who
just shows up.
Yeah, who I guess because people are fleeing Tokyo, he stays around and loots the place. Like
he's in like a restaurant and there's like food everywhere because he just took all the food, I guess.
Yep. And he's like drinking expensive champagne and all that, and Godzilla just passes by the window, and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And it's like, what's going on?
There's a pretty good shot later where like Godzilla is like rear projected behind him as he's running towards the camera.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Like it looks janky as hell, but it's kind of cool.
The rear projection stuff looks kind of.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what doesn't look good. Those fucking red laser effects.
Oh yeah.
They have like the military has these weird weapons where they have like these antennas that shoot lasers.
Yep.
And it looks like something that I can do in like half an hour, where they just put a laser effect on top of an antenna, like on top of the footage, and it just goes pew 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 pew.
It's very original Star Wars.
Yeah, it looked janky as fuck. I wrote down, so the whole thing with the USSR firing a nuke. So they had a nuke plan, but then the prime minister talked both countries out of firing their nukes at Godzilla.
Yep.
But then Godzilla attacked the submarine or the boat, whatever, where the control key was for arming the nukes or disarming them, and the guy who could disarm them was injured in the attack by Godzilla, so he couldn't stop the countdown for the nuke. And I'm like, this is probably the scariest thing in the movie, the fact that the USSR does not have any other prevention measures except for this one guy to enter a key into a thing.
Yeah. Which you told me, Steven, that there is an American re-edit of this movie, because of course there is.
Mm-hmm.
And in that they make it seem like the Soviets fired it intentionally.
Yep.
Which of course they did.
Well, the movie was re-edited by the US, so gotta get that dig in there, because Americans would never fire nukes intentionally. Am I right, Japan? Oh God.
Oh boy. So yeah, the nuke is fired by accident, and America fires their own nuke to intercept it, because what stops a nuke but another nuke?
Yeah. In the meantime, the Japanese sort of contingency plan for Godzilla Super X, like you said, Daniel, comes into effect. It's a giant flying fortress that looks out of TNG. Like,
yeah.
It's a giant flying spaceship or something, or ship, and it can fire some cannon blasts that can kill Godzilla, I guess.
Yeah, they try to explain it like his heart is similar to a nuclear reactor, so they use cadmium shells fire them into his mouth to sort of slow down his heart rate.
I think it's caternium.
I don't know. I wrote cadmium.
All right, catnip.
Catnip.
So they fire material used for cooling down nuclear reactors into his belly. I guess that counts for his mouth. And that seems to either cool him down or kill him.
It knocks him out.
Yeah, in the American version, they specifically mentioned it's not dead, but he awkwardly stumbles into a building, crashes into a building, and basically the nuclear fallout from the exploding two nukes that exploded in the atmosphere, which sounds horrific, creates a thunderstorm that electrocutes Godzilla and brings him back to life, basically like a nuclear CPR.
Basically, yeah.
And it brings him back to life. And as I'm saying this, I realize how ridiculous this is.
Don't you just love those like 80s lightning effects that were definitely drawn on the cell?
The Palpatine lighting effects.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Great.
zap you. Wah!
Which also means that the Super X is about to crash.
Yeah, because they're out of missiles, and Godzilla, now revived, crashes a building on the ship. In the meantime, the gang of people that are trying to make the radio work, they get saved by the government, and the scientist with the little radio, like, you know, one of those radios the size of a suitcase.
Right.
He gets to a station near the volcano. It's Mount Mihara in the movie called. It's a volcano in Japan. And there's a radio station there, which I assume can transmit further distances.
Mm.
And I like how his radio suitcase fits perfectly into a slot in this radio station. It's like whoop,
perfectly eject.
It's like a little cube you put into another cube. It's
Plug
like,
it in.
We have been ready for this for 30 years. Go and put that thing into that thing, sir. There's some cool miniature work in this last part, I thought, after Godzilla gets revived. Like, there's a lot of really cool implementation of destroyed sets, you know, like these sets of destruction followed with miniature work, with costume
good
work.
fire. Some good fire.
Yeah, there's some really cool fire in it. Fun fact, there's a shot of Godzilla's leg coming down and crushing some stuff. One of them was actually a up to scale leg.
Damn.
On a crane.
Damn.
So that's
a big leg.
That's a lot of fish. Naoko, who's the sister of the last survivor of the ship, I mean, she can't stand up to save her life. She is just constantly falling down.
Yeah.
Maybe she needs to see a doctor about that.
Maybe. So they lure Godzilla to the volcano, and then they blow up the volcano.
Right.
And traps him in it, and that's basically the movie.
Yep.
Two things about the volcano scene. One, I love the menacing shots of Godzilla walking towards an antenna. It's like Godzilla has fought every conceivable kaiju, but now he's going to be destroyed by an antenna. And then the mines, or whatever they used, were called like N7s, which is also possibly referenced in Evangelion, because they have the N2 mine.
Yeah, I'm getting that Anno is a big Godzilla fan, so I'm sure.
Like he's a very big fan of this, like, tokusatsu and things like that.
There's a lot of shots in Evangelion that felt reminiscent of what we just watched from Return of Godzilla.
And of course, he would go on to direct his own Godzilla, which is very similar to this.
Yeah.
However, you know.
So there's a really cool shot near the end when Godzilla's walking into the volcano, and you think it's a shot of Godzilla walking into the volcano, but it zooms back, and it's actually a shot of the Prime Minister and the people and the council looking at a monitor of Godzilla walking into a volcano, and then it cuts to them looking at it. And I just thought, with the music and everything, and I read that the director wanted to convey sort of a sense of sadness in the end.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we did kill a threat, but it's still just an animal. You know, you're basically killing an animal. So it's kind of this sense of sadness to it. You know, you're leading a creature to his death, and I thought it worked.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah. They linger a lot on him sinking down into the volcano.
Yeah,
and have a lot of reactions. They also had an interesting shot where, when the two nukes explode in the sky, which again horrifying, they cut to the Prime Minister standing looking at it.
Yeah, the Prime Minister was a very good actor in this.
Yeah,
Kaiju Kobayashi. It's a very appropriate name, right?
Yeah. But yeah, that is Return of Godzilla.
So Daniel, overall thoughts? What do you think about it?
I was surprisingly positive about this movie. Like, I really enjoyed it. It was good fun.
Yeah, I also really enjoyed it.
It's a bit janky, but
yeah, the rear screen projection stuff is rough.
But it's 80s Godzilla. What do you want?
I think most of the stuff here could be fixed with like a remaster, you know, like a proper remaster.
It made me think of like how funny a lineage it is if you take sort of this movie, the original, and then Shin.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they did something similar for the beginning of the Millennium Era as well. They are kind of the same movie, but slightly different, more attuned to their time and a little bit perfected, at least from this to Shin.
Mm-hmm.
The monster doesn't look as goofy. There's more of a center around stopping Godzilla in Shin, and the sort of geopolitical parts is sort of a smaller thing than it is here. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was surprisingly liking it all the way through.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like you said, it's very similar to Shin Godzilla. I like the emphasis on sort of people living in dread, not knowing how to stop it. Like,
right.
Fuck, what do we do? What do we? And I like the inclusion of the Cold War stuff because it sort of gives the movie a bigger scope. Even though obviously the actors hired for that were like TV actors, right? Like paycheck by paycheck kind of.
Yeah.
But I think it worked fine. Like the dialogue is very cheesy at times, and it's a lot of nonsense with the science and all that. But
yeah, and so some of the Japanese actors are a bit stilted, specifically our mains.
Yeah, the mains are not great. The one standout, like we said, is the Prime Minister.
Yeah, the Prime Minister is probably the best, just general actor in the movie.
Yeah,
and he's pretty good.
He's commander actor, not general actor. Right. Want to hear some fun facts, Daniel, about this movie?
Give me them. Give me the fun facts.
So we talked about the suit. The suit used for this movie was stolen and never found.
Okay. I wonder if it's still out there, because I read that the only surviving suit is the Mechagodzilla suit, because it's not made of latex.
Oh, right. Okay. So it would have probably deteriorated by now, right? Because from the
unless
80s.
It's been. I mean, they know how to keep some of those. Like, I say they, as people know how to keep these kinds of suits. Like, I went to the Stanley Kubrick exhibit and saw the monkey suits from 2001. They don't look brand new, but damn, they still look good.
Fair enough. Okay.
But it's probably rotten.
It's probably in somebody's garage. So the suit was stolen. The idea of including Cold War tensions as part of the plot was included from the unmade Godzilla 3D movie.
Ah.
Because they were like, fuck, we can't make this now. It fell through. The production stopped. And Toho was like, well, we'll just have our own stab of it, And then they just put that idea into this one. You know that this movie is supposed to be a sequel to the first ever movie from 1954. But in that movie, Godzilla turns into a pile of bones at the end. So
let's just forget that.
Yeah. Fun fact. Oh, this is so stupid. So in the American version of Return of Godzilla, called Godzilla 1985, there's like reshot scenes with like in the Pentagon, right?
Right.
And somebody says something to the effect of, like, oh, this did happen in 1954 or whatever, but they never found his body.
So, of course, for this movie, they slightly altered quite a bit, the design of Godzilla to fit more with this idea of a more monster-like Godzilla compared to the more, child-friendly version they had in the Showa era. One of the ways they did that was they made him bigger, like law-wise bigger. He is 80 meters tall.
Right, because buildings got bigger, right?
Yeah, because Tokyo got more developed from, the 50s. So they wanted him to be more imposing against the skyline, so they made him 20 meters bigger. He was 50 meters in the original, now he's 80. And he still looks tiny, sometimes.
A fun fact about the 1985 American re-edit, they brought back the American actor who was in the American edit of the original movie, Raymond Burr.
He played a journalist in the original?
Yeah, and he's technically in canon, if you want to call this bullshit canon. But in canon, he's still a journalist. And they like the American government goes to him. And by this point, he's like, an old man, and he's just a retired journalist. And the American government comes to him for aid or information or something. and they get him to the Pentagon, and all the generals are there talking, and he's just there, and he's like this old man, and the U.S. general is like, "Thank God you're here."
Your only hope. Bring your camera. We're gonna launch you into Japan.
We're Prepare the subs. Release the drones.
We have our own Super X.
It's this guy. What's your name? Fun fact, his name in the original movie was Steve Martin. So they just call him Mr. Martin in this one so that they don't draw comparisons to, the comedian.
Steve Martin,
yeah. This movie unfortunately bombed terribly. A lot of it, retrospectively, people think it's due to the fact that at that point Japanese cinema market was flooded by American releases. And that made Japanese cinema look a bit like B-movie quality. And especially when you look at something like Godzilla, which already is kind of B-movie-ish.
Yeah, that's kind of the reputation Godzilla has, at least in America, is being very B-movie because,
So it had a budget of $6 million US, this movie, Return of Godzilla.
Right.
It made $6.2 million.
Right.
And because of that's sort of what propelled them to make the American re-edit, to sort of recoup at least more of their cost, to make a bit more profit, so to speak.
Right. And I'm assuming, like, over the years with selling to, late night American television and whatever, that's probably made a profit.
All right. Well, so I guess this ends this episode of the Kaiju season of RODANE with Return of Godzilla. Stay tuned next time when we do Not Zilla from 2020, a sort of spoof on the Godzilla movie franchise. I think fitting enough. We did an OG, and now we do a spoof.
Yep.
So we'll see how that stacks up. And stay tuned.
Yeah.
We're gonna post on Facebook a full list of all the catalog that we'll be doing. And good stuff.
Good stuff.
Right. See ya.
See ya.